Welcome to Mishna study, Maaser, Sheni, Mishna. Over here in this Mishnah, we're going to discuss some actions or some things that Yohanan Kohen Gadol did. Yohanan Kohen Gadol was one of the Kohanim Gedolim in the late Second Temple period. He's actually the son of Shimon HaShmonai, right? So he's actually known as Yohanan Hurkenus, and he was a Kohen Gadol, and he was a political figure. You see his name coming up in rabbinic literature. And we're going to see over here, Yohanan Kohen Gadol, hodayot ha-maaser, right? He went ahead and he stopped. He stopped the saying, the recitation of the confession of the Maaserot. Now, why did he do this? So Harabam explains that in his day, they couldn't say, Kechol mitzvatecha asher tzivitani, I did as you commanded. And why so? Because Hashem said he's supposed to give Maaser Rishon to the Leviim. And what happened in his day? There were no Leviim in Eretz Israel, because in the times of Ezra, when Ezra wanted to come back up, and he came back up to Eretz Israel, right, to return, right, after the first destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash, right, we had that entire Galut, and everyone left, right, with Galut Bavel, and then they returned, right, when Koresh Melech Paras came and said, okay, go back to Eretz Israel. So Ezra went with really a small minority of Jews. It's very interesting how the whole Sefer Ezra and Nehemiah really recalls this entire story. And when they came, so Ezra was coming to come up, and no one from Levi came. The tribe of Levi, no one came, right? Most of the important people stayed, where they were, outside in the Galut. They didn't want to come and make Aliyah to Eretz Israel. And actually Ezra says, "V'avina ba'am ve'ubakohanim u'bnei Levi u'bakohanim u'bnei Levi lo matzati sham." Right? I looked around. I looked at the nation. I looked at the Kohanim. I didn't find anyone from Bnei Levi. So what did he do? What did he do? He fined the Leviim that they should not give them the Maaser. Rather, we're going to give Kohanim the Maaser going forward. So usually that first tithe of Maaser, right? Tirumah gives to the Kohen, but the Maaser Rishon goes to Levi. Comes Ezra, I made a takana. We're going to give the Maaserot to the Kohanim. So now that we're doing so, you can't say so comes Yohanan Kohen Gadol and he says, okay, we can't make this confession anymore. We can't say we do Maaserot because we're not doing it appropriately. Now the Mishnah continues. Afhu bitelet ha-me'orerim. He also went ahead and he got rid of the me'orerim, right? These are the wakers, and the nokfim. Beta nokfim, these are the people that would strike. They strike these animals. What are they? So they would be Leviim. At the time of the korban, when they would bring the korban, they would say a certain pasuk. They would quote a pasuk from Tehillim. Ura lama tishan Hashem. All right, wake up. Why are you sleeping, Hashem? Now, he said, Yohanan Kohen Gadol says, no, it's inappropriate. You can't say that. And he stopped them from saying that. Why? Because it came off just very inappropriate. It's like they're almost demanding of Hakadosh Baruch Hu and yelling to him, and it's not something hagun. It's not something that's respectable. Also, the nokfim, he got rid of the nokfim. There were some people who would actually make a little blemish over the eyes of a korban, right? They would cause it to bleed a little. And why would they do this? So a little blood would fall into the eyes of the animal, and that way they could easily slaughter the animal. It's not considered a mum that's posel on gabe hamizbeach, right? But it doesn't look good. It looks like a mum, even though it's not an official mum. So he said, okay, they went ahead and did this, and he said, no, we should get he got it right. He did away with it, and instead he ended up, putting these 12 rings in the Beit HaMikdash, where they were able to do shahita much easier, right? The language of nokfim, right? Nokfim comes from the language of pitziah, right? Pitziah is the blemish, right? The Talmud in Chulin. It says, "In adam nikaf be'etzba'o milemata elam ken machrizin alev milemala." A person doesn't hurt his finger, right? Doesn't damage his finger, bang up his finger, down below in our world, unless it was commanded, from above, right? So it's more of a statement of hashgacha pratit over here. Also, the pasuk in Yeshayahu, where it says "kinokef zayit," right? That's when you bang the tree, you bang the olive tree, and everything falls off, right? So, because it looked like a ba'alum, he did away with it. Now, ad yamav, right? Until his days, haya patish makeh b'Yerushalayim, right? The hammer would bang in Yerushalayim, meaning what? On Chol HaMoed. On Chol HaMoed, they would work in Yerushalayim, and he went ahead and he stopped people from working in Jerusalem on Chol HaMoed, right? Just out of respect for the holiday. And in his days, people didn't have to ask, demai. They didn't have to ask what is this demai? Meaning what? Until his days, people would be mekel, right? And people would be mekel when it came to laws of terumot and maaserot. So people would go ahead and they would separate the terumah gedolah because that was something that was hayam mitah for, right? When it came to maaser rishon, maaser sheni, people were lax. And what would happen if someone knew something was? They would ask, "Is this demai? Is it not demai?" And they would always have to ask. And the people who were medakdek and really cared, they would try to figure out if did you separate maaserot, did you not separate maaserot. And when they found out, they would have to go ahead and separate. Now, they would have to separate Maaser Rishon and then Maaser Sheni, right? And they would have to really go ahead and take care of, everything that needs to be taken care of. Now comes Yohanan Kohen Gadol, and he says, right, which is really how we hold now the halacha as we learned it in Masechet Demai. And he said, if you have Demai, you don't need to ask. We just assume that everything's Demai. We know the Terumah Gedolah was taken out, right? And the only thing we need to separate is the Terumat Maaser. Right, so all you have to do is don't worry. There's not so much. You don't have to separate Maaser Rishon and Maaser, and there's not so much that you need to go ahead and try to figure out how much more do I need to take. Rather, Terumah Gedolah is taken out. Maaser Rishon you don't have to take out. Maaser Ani you don't have to take out because we're going to say if you're a Levi, go ahead and prove it to me that I didn't separate Maaser Rishon from it. If you could prove to me that I didn't separate, then I'll give it to you. But because the burden's on you to prove and not on me, I could go ahead and eat it. The only issue I can't eat is something I'm going to be hayam mitah for if I eat, and that's terumah. Right? Terumah we already separated, but there's also terumat maaser. Right, which is what the Levi needs to separate 10% of his 10% to give that to the Kohen. So we're going to separate 10% of 10%, which ends up being 1% of the total, which is really not a lot. So people really didn't care about it. So they would go ahead and separate this 1%. And if there's any Maaser Sheni, we mentioned that you would take that up and eat it in Jerusalem yourself. Right, so people also, they're benefiting. So there's no real downside, right, for buying demai. Right, beforehand, you would have to separate Maaser Rishon. You're giving away 10% of your produce that you're buying. So everyone has to look into it and really dive into, was the Maaser taken, was it not taken? Comes Yohanan Kohen Gadol and he says, no, if someone wants, if the Levi wants it, he's going to have to prove it to you. The only thing you need to separate if you're buying demai is 1% to give to the Kohen, and the Maaser Sheni if you're going and you'll eat it yourself in Jerusalem. So that's really not coming out of your pocket anyway. And that's what it means in Adam Tzarech Lish'ol Demai, because now there's an easy takana, there's an easy fix, right? Where everyone's not going to be at a big loss, and therefore no one had to ask anymore, and everyone could just buy demai in the shuk, and really everything as you mentioned in Masechet Demai, and that sums up our Masechet. So that's the end of Maaser Sheni. It was awesome Masechet. Chazak u'baruch, everyone's finished. The next Masechet we go on to Masechet Hala.